Second Chronicles 29. King Hezekiah of Judah. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled 29 years from Jerusalem. His mother was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. Hezekiah obeyed the Lord by doing right just as his ancestor David had done. The temple is purified. In the first month of the first year of Hezekiah's rule, he unlocked the doors to the Lord's temple and had them repaired. Then he called the priests and Levites to the east courtyard of the temple and said, "It's time to purify the temple of the Lord God of our ancestors. You Levites must first go through the ceremony to make yourselves clean. Then go into the temple and bring out everything that is unclean and unacceptable to the Lord." Some of our ancestors were unfaithful and disobeyed the Lord our God. Not only did they turn their backs on the Lord, but they also completely ignored his temple. They locked the doors, then let the lamp go out and stopped burning incense and offering sacrifices to him. The Lord became terribly angry with the people of Judah and Jerusalem, and everyone was shocked and horrified at what he did to punish them. Not only were our ancestors killed in battle, but our own children and wives were taken captive. So I have decided to renew our agreement with the Lord God of Israel. Maybe then he will stop being so angry with us. Let's not waste any time, my friend. You're the one who were chosen to be the Lord's priest and to offer him sacrifices. When Hezekiah finished talking, the following Levite leaders went to work: Mahat, son of Amasha, and Joel, son of Ajariah, from the Kohath clan, Kish, son of Abdi, and Ajariah, son of Zehalelel, from the Merari clan, Joah, son of Jimma, and Eden, son of Joah, from the Gerson clan, Shimri and Jeuel from the Elijapan clan, Jechaliah and Mataniah from the Ashab clan, Jehuel and Simei from the Henman clan, Semaiah and Uziel from the Jeduthun clan. These leaders gathered together the rest of the Levites, and they all went through the ceremony to make themselves clean. Then they began to purify the temple according to the law of the Lord, just as Hezekiah had commanded. The priests went into the temple and carried out everything that was unclean. They put these things in the courtyard, and from there the Levites carried them outside the city to Kidron Valley. The priests and Levites began their work on the first day of the first month. It took them 1 week to purify the courtyard of the temple, and another week to purify the temple. So on the 6th day of that same month, they went back to Hezekiah and said, "Your Majesty, we have finished our work. The entire temple is now pure again, and so is the altar and its utensils, as well as the table for the sacred loaves of bread and its utensils. And we have brought back all the things that King Ahaz took from the temple during the time he was unfaithful to God. We purified them and put them back in front of the altar, worship in the temple. At once, Hezekiah called together the officers of Jerusalem, and they went to the temple. They brought with them 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 goats as sacrifice to take away the sin of Hezekiah's family and of the people of Judah, as well as to purify the temple. Hezekiah told the priests who were descendants of Aaron to sacrifice these animals on the altar. The priests killed the bulls, the rams, and the lambs, then spattered the blood on the altar. They took the goat to Hezekiah and the worshipper, and they laid their hands on the animals. The priest then killed the goats and spattered the blood on the altar as a sacrifice to take away the sins of everyone in Israel, because Hezekiah had commanded that this sacrifice be made for all people of Israel. Next, Hezekiah assigned the Levites to their place in the temple. He gave them cymbals, harps, and other stringed instruments, according to the instructions that the Lord had given King David and the 2 prophets Gad and Nathan. The Levites were ready to play the instrument that had belonged to David. The priests were ready to blow the trumpet. As soon as Hezekiah gave the signal for the sacrifices to be burned on the altar, the musicians began singing praise to the Lord and playing their instrument, and everyone worshipped the Lord. This continued until the last animal was sacrificed. After that, Hezekiah and the crowd of worshippers bowed down and worshipped the Lord. Then Hezekiah and his officers ordered the Levites to sing the songs of praise that David and Asaph the prophet had written. And so they bowed down and joyfully sang praise to the Lord. Hezekiah said to the crowd, "Now that you are once again acceptable to the Lord, bring sacrifices and offering to give him thanks." The people did this, and some of them voluntarily brought the animals to be offered as sacrifices. 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 lambs were brought as sacrifices to please the Lord. 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep were brought as sacrifice to ask the Lord's blessing. There were not enough priests to skin all these animals, because many of the priests had not taken the time to go through the ceremony to make themselves clean. However, since all the Levites had made themselves clean, they helped the priest until the last animal was skinned. Beside all the sacrifices that were burned on the altar, the fat from the other animal sacrifices were burned, and offerings of wine were poured over the altar. So the temple was once again used for worshiping the Lord. Hezekiah and the people of Judah celebrated because God had helped them make this happen so quickly. Chapter 30. Hezekiah prepared to celebrate Passover. Passover wasn't celebrated in the first month, which was the usual time, because many of the priests were still unclean and unacceptable to serve, and because not everyone in Judah had come to Jerusalem for the festival. So Hezekiah, his officers, and the people agreed to celebrate Passover in the second month. Hezekiah sent a message to everyone in Israel and Judah, including those in the territories of Ephraim and West Manasseh, visiting them to the temple in Jerusalem for the celebration of Passover in honor of the Lord God of Israel. Everyone from Beersheba in the south to Dan in the north was invited. This was the largest crowd of people that had ever celebrated Passover, according to the official records. Hezekiah's messengers went everywhere in Israel and Judah with the following letter. People of Israel, now that you have survived the invasions of the Assyrian kings, it's time for you to turn back to the Lord God our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob worshipped. If you do this, he will stop being angry. Don't follow the example of your ancestors and your Israelite relatives in the north. They were unfaithful to the Lord, and he punished them horribly. Don't be stubborn like your ancestors. Decide now to obey the Lord our God. Come to Jerusalem and worship him in the temple that will belong to him forever. Then he will stop being angry, and the enemies that have captured your families will show pity and send them back home. The Lord God is kind and merciful, and if we turn back to him, he will no longer turn his back on you. The messenger went to every town in Ephraim and West Manasseh, as far north as the territory of Zebulun. But people laughed and insulted them. Only a few people from the tribes of Asher went. Manasseh and Zebulun were humble and went to Jerusalem. God also made everyone in Judah eager to do what Hezekiah and his officers had commanded. Passover is celebrated. In the second month, a large crowd of people gathered in Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of thin bread. They took all the foreign altars and incense altar in Jerusalem and drew them into Kidron Valley. Then, on the 14th day of that same month, the Levites began killing the lambs for Passover, because many of the worshippers were unclean and were not allowed to kill their own lambs. Meanwhile, some of the priests and Levites felt ashamed because they had not gone through the ceremony to make themselves clean. They immediately went through that ceremony and went to the temple, where they offered the sacrifice to please the Lord. Then the priests and Levites took their positions according to the law of Moses, the servant of God. As the Levites killed the lamb, they handed some of the blood to the priest, who splattered it on the altar. Most of the people that came from Ephraim, West Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not made themselves clean, but they ignored God's law and ate the Passover lambs anyway. Hezekiah found out what they had done and prayed, Lord God, these people are unclean and according to the laws of the holiness, but they are worshipping you just as their ancestors did. So please be kind and forgive them. The Lord answered Hezekiah's prayer and did not punish them. The worshippers in Jerusalem were very happy and celebrated the festival for 7 days. The Levites and priests sang praise to the Lord every day and played their instrument. Hezekiah thanked the Levites for doing such a good job leading the celebration. The worshippers celebrated for 7 days by offering sacrifices, by eating the sacred meals, and by praising the Lord God of their ancestors. Everyone was so excited that they agreed to celebrate 7 more days. So Hezekiah gave the people 10,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep to be offered as sacrifices and to be used as food for the sacred meals. His officers gave 10,000 bulls and 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep, and many more priests agreed to go through the ceremony to make themselves clean. Everyone was very happy, including those from Judah and Israel, the priests and Levites, and the foreigners living in Judah and Israel. It was the biggest celebration in Jerusalem since the kings of King Solomon, the son of David. The priests and Levites asked God to bless the people, and from his home in heaven, he did. Chapter 31. The people destroyed the local shrines. After the festival, the people went to every town in Judah and smashed the stone images of foreign gods and cut down the sacred poles for worshipping the goddess Asherah. They destroyed all the local shrines and foreign altars in Judah, as well as those in the territories of Benjamin, Ephraim, and West Manasseh. Then everyone went home. Offerings for the priests and Levites. Hezekiah divided the priests and Levites into groups according to their duties. Then he assigned them the responsibility of offering sacrifices to please the Lord and sacrifices to ask his blessing. He also appointed people to serve at the temple and to sing praises at the temple gate. Hezekiah provided animals from his own herd and flocks to use for the morning and evening sacrifices, as well as for the sacrifices during the Sabbath celebration, the next moon festivals, and the other religious feasts required by the law of the Lord. He told the people of Jerusalem to bring the offerings that are to be given to the priests and Levites, so that they would have time to serve the Lord with their work. As soon as the people heard what the king wanted, they brought a tenth of everything they owned, including their best grain, wine, olive oil, honey, and the other crops. The people from the other towns of Judah brought a tenth of their herds and flocks, as well as a tenth of anything they had dedicated to the Lord. The people started bringing their offerings to Jerusalem in the 3rd month, and the last one arrived 4 months later. When Hezekiah and his officers saw these offerings, they thanked the Lord and the people. Hezekiah asked the priests and the Levites about the large amount of offerings. The high priest at the time was Azariah, the descendant of Zadok, and he replied, "Ever since the people have been bringing us their offerings, we have had more than enough food and supplies. The Lord had certainly blessed his people. Look at how much is left over." So the king gave orders for storerooms to be built in the temple, and when they were completed, all the extra offerings were taken there. Hezekiah and Azariah then appointed Conaniah the Levite to be in charge of these storerooms. His brother Shimei was his assistant, and the following Levites worked with them: Jehiel, Ajijah, Nahath, Ashael, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachah, Mahath, and Benaiah. Kor, son of Imnah, was assigned to guard the east gate, and he was put in charge of receiving the offerings voluntarily given to God and of dividing them among the priests and Levites. He had 6 assistants who were responsible for seeing that all the priests in the other towns of Judah also got their share of these offerings. They were Eden, Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah. Every priest and every Levite over 30 years old who worked daily in the temple received part of these offerings according to their duties. The priests were listed in the official record by clans, and the Levites 20 years old and older were listed by their duties. The official record also included their wives and children, because they had also been faithful in keeping themselves clean and acceptable to serve the Lord. Hezekiah also appointed other men to take food and supplies to the priests and Levites whose homes were in the pasture land around the towns of Judah. But the priest had to be descendant of Aaron, and the Levites had to be listed in the official record. Everything Hezekiah did while he was king of Judah, including what he did for the temple in Jerusalem, was right and good. He was a successful king because he obeyed the Lord God with all his heart.